How's everyone doing today? Good. Good. Nice that we don't have to do inversion anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's too bright. You can never win. It's always something. It's
Always a
either
winner.
too gray, too bright. Always tempting. We're always looking for that Goldilocks
It's
situation.
better than -34 in Minnesota.
Oh my gosh, I know one of my closest friends is a pastor in Minneapolis, so we are in close conversation on a daily basis. Yeah, so they had -16.
Oh.
All right, it's our last day of Revelation. I'm gonna kind of try to keep us moving here. I'm gonna do a quick review. We've covered a lot of information in the past 3 weeks. Like I said, I'm gonna take us up until chapter 12. Chapter 12 is gonna be kind of, we're gonna look forward to chapter 12 to 22 in the fall. But we will have tackled the first half, which is exciting. So remember, we'll just do a quick review as we get our way through here, and that also helps me to get to the slides that I have for today. But remember that this book starts as a revelation of Jesus to John. So it's a message from Jesus to John to share with the church. It's shared as a vision, not necessarily as a book. It is a book, but the seer, John, is told multiple times, write this down. So we know that he's seeing this incredible vision. So we get a lot of words that are illustrative. It looked like, it seemed like, a lot of sort of language that comes close to what he's seeing, but not exactly. As a reminder, these are the cities that we have the first letter to. This nice little circle, kind of on that western edge of Turkey, current day Turkey. In these days, it was run by the Roman Empire. And you can see that this stretched the Roman Empire way out on their eastern borders, and there was a lot of area for trade that ran through these particular cities. This gives us a remembrance of the whole area. And this tells us where the island of Patmos is, which is where John receives this vision. We have the 7 letters to the 7 churches, and in each one of those 7 letters, there's that symmetry, there's the charge. This is what I want you to do. There's the affirmation. This is what I see you doing well. And then there's the challenge. Please do this or else. And that happens in all of those churches. There's a little bit of hidden language, apocryphal language, a lot of allusions to the Old Testament. So when we see things like, you tolerate that woman Jezebel, it doesn't mean that there's actually a woman Jezebel. It's hearkening back to stories within the Old Testament. I'm going to fly through this. You have these things in your documents from the weeks that have led up until today. So we get through those 7 letters to the 7 churches, and then John takes us up into the court of heaven. And we have this question, who has the authority to open the scroll? And no one is able to open it. And then all of a sudden, this lamb steps forward, and he is the one who is able to open the scroll. And we have this interlude of worship where we see this incredible vision of God, of the lamb, and of these angels and living creatures surrounding this God in worship. And that's from Revelation 4 and 5. And there's lots of texts from the Messiah that actually come from that part of Revelation. Actually, a lot of the Messiah comes from Revelation, believe it or not. We're going to get to another one today. So we're caught up into this court of heaven, offering us this vision of worship as an interlude. And we're going to have another interlude today. So the book of Revelation sort of has these interludes because it wants to remind us over and over again that there is one outside of this turbulent line of history that has authority. We aren't just victims of the way that the cosmos is unfolding. There is somebody who has authority within this place, and they are working out their authority in the way that they see fit. That is the continual message, because remember, these churches that we just looked at, that little circle in and around the western side of Turkey, they're undergoing significant forms of persecution. It's not popular to be a Christian in that first century. It's hard. There's a lot that they're up against. Even when it comes to figuring out how to operate within the marketplace, it's not easy. They get sort of pigeonholed because of the fact that, remember, they're termed what? Atheists. They're termed atheists because they do not believe in the gods. Not only do they not believe in the gods, but they do not believe in giving authority to Caesar. So therefore, they were atheists. They did not proclaim any god. That was often how Christians were talked about until later when Christians began to take power, which would have happened 300 years after this, 200 and something. So, all right, so that's the court of heaven, chapters 4 and 5, and we ask this question, why might this image of worship be presented first before the violent visions? We reflected a little bit on that. And then we just kind of started to get into the 4 horsemen. So remember, the seal opens, and when the seal opens, what we're going to see is a reflection. I mean, it's not all roses, let's be very clear. When this seal opens, it's actually kind of difficult. Well, not that's putting it mildly. When this seal opens, destruction breaks forth because the cosmos begins to unfold, and it is not great, right? There's a battle between good and evil. There are evil forces that are at work, and as soon as that seal opens, those evil forces begin to take root within the actual world and make effect and have effect on humankind. So evil is real. That's one of the messages of Revelation, not just the Bible itself, but we see it very clear here in Revelation. Evil is real. It has a beginning. It has an end. It's limited. It is not eternal. It does not live on with God in power around those heavenly thrones. There's no evil there, but evil is real within the context of human history. There is an unfolding to it. And it is going to take shape, and it is going to get worse. It's not very good news. It's kind of hard news, actually. But it would have been good news for those first century Christians, because if you've ever been going through a really, really, really dark time in your life, you know, when you're not there, it's kind of like you don't really think about it as much. But when you are in that dark season, you just want somebody to say, it is dark. Like, it is hard, like there is evil. You kind of want people to say that. And a few years ago when we moved here and we had kind of some stuff happen in our lives, I just felt that really heavily. I just felt like, you know, we all kind of want to make the best of it and talk about how God is good and all of that kind of stuff. And that's true. There's nothing that's not true about that. But boy, when you are walking through it, you also want somebody to be able to say, yeah, there is darkness and there is evil and it is real. And you have to kind of battle. And doesn't mean you're battling alone, but like you're out there and stuff is happening. You don't have control over all of it. And so that's what happens when those seals open. Bad stuff starts happening, really bad stuff. And we're going to get into some more of that today. So the first thing that happens, now again, remember, this is this vision. It's very hard to keep track of what's happening here. There's a lot going on. So the first thing that happens, so we have the seals, right? The seals begin to open, and in the seals, the first 4 seals correlate with these first 4 horsemen. You don't have to know this information, but it's kind of helpful to see kind of what's happening. Then we're going to get to the later seals, but within those seals, there's also woes. So it's very confusing. You get to this part where it's like the first woe has been completed. The second, this was the end of the second woe. Then we're going to get to the end of the third woe. So these woes keep happening also. They're kind of within the context of the seals. Then we're going to get to the 7 trumpets. Then we're going to get to the 7 bowls, okay? And within all of those things, continual sort of, I hate to say it, this is a great book for people who really like horror movies, but really bad stuff keeps happening over and over and over again. Yes.
Quick question. In my mind, when you say the word seal,
Yeah.
I imagine this thing about the size of a plate.
Yeah.
Like a bread, and it's going to be cracked.
Yeah.
And then out of that, I mean, this is just my mind.
Yeah.
What does the author
Yeah.
mean when he says seal?
Yeah.
Is it something that he actually, is it like an envelope that he rips
Yeah.
open, or
Yeah.
I don't know what the
Yeah.
word was for sealed.
Yeah, I think, it's an allusion to the scrolls that were sealed up, and then like the signet of the ruler was placed on that seal
Right.
in order, and that ruler was the one who had the authority to open the seal, right? So it's kind of playing with all of those allusions for, yeah. But seal comes up a second time too, in a slightly different way, because we learn that the 144,000 are sealed, and that's a different kind of a sealing. We don't see a scroll associated with that, but they're sealed, and that is going to offer them some protection within this outpouring of evil that happens within the world. Okay, so we did the 4 horsemen last week. So today we are going to come to the 5th and the 6th seal. Yeah, I just want to say one other thing first before we get there. Oh, yeah, that's gonna happen in 9. Okay, never mind. We're gonna pick up in 7 here. So we'll get there when we get there. So this is the part where now again, we talked about how there is kind of this cosmic battle that's unfolding. Once the seal starts opening, there's this cosmic battle that's unfolding, and there's continual interludes. There's the interlude of worship. We're going to see that again this week, but there's also this interlude of protection around those that follow the Lamb. Okay, so if you can kind of put this into the context of the day, and also for our context today, there's a message which is that God is still active and protecting those who are undergoing the turbulent line of history. So evil is out there and unfolding. It's limited. It's not eternal. It does not have complete power. But not only that, God protects those who have to face it in some degree. So that comes up here in this 144,000. Now, in your document today, I have listed the different ways that the 144,000 have been interpreted. I just want you to know about that. We're not going to talk about it here because I'm going to go with my gut, which is lean is better than luxurious. And when we think about the 144,000, it's really just the number 12 by the number 12 by the number 12. So the complete, sort of this number that doesn't really have numerical value. It has symbolic value to say that it's a whole lot of people, and it's complete. So we're going to get to chapter 7 here. After this, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth so that no wind could blow on earth or sea or against any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God. Now this comes back to what you were talking about, John's seal. So this is kind of that different kind of seal, but it still has that authority, but this angel has the seal. And he called with a loud voice to the 4 angels who had been given power to damage the earth and the sea, saying, "Do not damage the earth or the sea or the trees until we have marked the servants of our God with a seal on their foreheads." This text is beautiful and needs to be upheld a little bit more. We're afraid to uphold it because I know it's used by the Jehovah's Witnesses and all of that sort of thing. And so we kind of want to shy away from it and be like, we don't want to walk around like, oh, I have the seal and you don't. That's really not what this is about. This is about the fact that God provides a seal and protection on those whom he loves, right? And that's a very strong message for that early church that is facing, they've got no one on their side. It's not like they've got a government on their side. It's not like they have strong rulers or celebrities on their side. They've got no one on their side, and they have to figure out how to live with the Christian witness in the face of that. So this is a message to them. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000, sealed out of every tribe from the people of Israel. So again, this is rounding up all of humanity. From the tribe of Judah, I'm just going to go down. From the tribe of Reuben, from the tribe of Gad, from the tribe of Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh. Interesting that Manasseh is considered here. Simeon, Levi, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. And after this I looked, and there was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, from all the tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, robed in white, with palm branches in their hands. That's the second time we see palm branches. Once is when Jesus comes down, right? On Palm Sunday, we're going to do that, but this is the second time. And they cried out in a loud voice, saying, "Salvation belongs to our God who is seated on the throne and to the Lamb." And all the angels stood around the throne and around the elders and around the four living creatures. Somebody observed that last week, very helpful. And they fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, singing. And think of all the singing that's happening. So it's not as if we're caught up into this heaven where nothing is happening. We're caught up into this heaven where there's worship and singing and engagement, and people are alive. And there's this beautiful picture of what it is, where it is that we're going. It's very important for people that are facing their death to recognize that they have a place where they're going. And that's one of the things that the book of Revelation does. It's not necessarily that it's that our souls are taken up into heaven, but we get to bear witness then to this living God who is still alive, and we get to be caught up into his space. So all the angels stood around the throne and around the elders on the four living creatures, and they fell before the throne. Amen. And blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever. And then one of the elders addressed me, saying, "Who are these robed in white, and where have they come from?" I said to him, "Sir, you are the one who knows." And then he said, "These are they who have come out of the great ordeal." Now, this is that word tribulation. So sometimes you see tribulation come up here. These are they that have, so they have come out of something very difficult and very challenging. They have come out of the great ordeal. And you think about how often in that first century Christians were martyred. So this is also an allusion to those martyrs, that their lives have been remembered and counted, and that they have something to receive for that which they sacrifice. And then he said, "These are they that have come out of the great ordeal. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. And for this reason, they are before the throne of God and worship him day and night within his temple. The one who is seated on the throne will shelter them. They will hunger no more, thirst no more. The sun will not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb at the center will be their shepherd. He will guide them to the springs of the water of life, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes." So in the book of Revelation, there are, we just got through the horsemen. We just got through the horsemen, and the horsemen were not good. Remember, they came and they destroyed, and every horseman that came destroyed a little bit more. And then the last one that came was death, and it destroyed a little bit more. And in the middle of that, there is this interlude that takes us back into that vision of worship and helps us to remember that even those that made it through that horseman challenge, they have been washed in the blood of the Lamb. So in the middle of persecution, there is continual hope that God sees and that God redeems, right? And keeping your eye on that prize at all times. That's one of the goals here of the book of Revelation. So let's take a pause here. I want you to just turn to your neighbor. And it's very hard for us to talk about persecution here in the United States because it's not quite the same as it was in the first century. But let's just talk about ways in which we struggle to express our faith. You can use the word persecution if you want. That's just fine. We don't live in the first century. There's no way for us to know what it's like in that place for us today. But how is it hard to kind of share our faith, and how might this text give us a little bit of encouragement? Remember that those ones that are remembered here are the martyrs. They're the ones that kind of stood up in and against culture. So there's various ways that one can be a witness. Sometimes it's with your mouth, sometimes it's with your life, sometimes it's just with, the simple things that you do. So let's just kind of chat with each other for a second about the way that we experience forms of persecution in our 21st century lives. Now, what we're waiting for, that we experience some of the first.
Being a Christian living in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Being a Christian living in Salt Lake City, Utah,
As a kid. they would
Yes.
as a
play
kid,
with us.
right, because
There's lines drawn, and you're not, yes, and that comes up with, I've talked to a few people who have that story, it's very difficult, yes. So feeling like you're the outsider, because you don't share the same beliefs as the majority of the populace, yeah, yes. I think it's very difficult to be a public school teacher.
public school teacher. So another instance where you feel like maybe you're also in the minority most of the time in terms of how you see things and constantly, facing maybe some moral dilemmas that other people aren't facing. Yes, very good.
When you see somebody standing in the corner
Right,
with a Bible preaching,
right.
are they crazy? Or are they doing God's will?
Right. Because the reality that the word has gone out and that people can do whatever they want with it and sometimes is that good, is that bad? We don't know, but that creates some challenges for our 21st century, yeah. Because sometimes those are the messages that people hear.
What about the question of abortion?
Right, so the question of political things, whether it be abortion or, the list goes on, which is legally, yeah, how do we practice it legally? Is this something that we want to put our vote behind to enact into policy? All of those sorts of things, or is this something that we want to support because we believe in the power of life and the fact that life is sacred? How do we navigate this in a world that is very broken and has lots of people who have gone into it?
So you go to a dinner party and you don't talk religion.
Right, so religion is off the table in terms of what you can talk about with other folks, which changes the relationship, right? So you're dealing with things on a very surface level. Good, good. And that can impact, in business, that can impact your sort of market power and all of that stuff. Yeah.
And I think there's also just a fear of being authentic, to really share what you believe, because either other Christians or non-Christians may judge you because of your right
Yeah.
to believe and.
Yeah, so that constant fear of judgment over your own belief, what's gonna happen, what are people gonna think, are you gonna be allowed in different social circles because of that? Yeah. Those are all very real. Good.
Mhm.
Good.
Well, I think there's many ways in which those same things applied to the first century. They were just dealing with a different context, but you can imagine that the same themes continue to come up. One of the challenges that they faced is that they were walking through a time of very deep darkness in terms of government turmoil. And during the time when the book of Revelation was written, remember, we talked about maybe it was written during the time of Nero, maybe Domitian. But both of those emperors were not kind to Christians. Domitian was worse than Nero, believe it or not. And then things are going to get progressively worse for Christians during that first century time. Now they will get breaks in that time, but it was a very highly persecuted time with not a lot of shelters. It's not like they have tax shelters or policy shelters or places where they could sort of hide. They were really exposed to the threats of that first century world. So there were a lot of challenges that were before them, and a lot of people died. And that is also important to remember, that death was a very common part of their life. And a lot of people died for their faith because they wouldn't adhere to this whole thing of giving the emperor what the emperor needed. But also sometimes they died just for stupid reasons, like when the fire of Rome happened and then Nero needed somebody to blame the fire on. He blamed the Christians. He just needed a scapegoat, and they just happened to be a scapegoat. And so Christians were killed out of that decision as well. And that wasn't even really a testament to their faith. That was just because somebody just needed someone to blame. So there was a lot of death within that first century, and this attests to the fact that they had to make sense of the fact that their deaths were not in vain, right? That these weren't going to be empty deaths. They were deaths in which there was vindication and there was hope. Hope beyond death is a continual theme of Revelation over and over and over again. All right, so let's get to the seventh seal. So this picks up in chapter 8. So when the Lamb opened the seventh seal, and again, this takes us to the end of the seals. There's going to be more things, though. There was silence in heaven for a half an hour.
Yes.
Silence. Nothing could have been spoken. And I saw 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Now we're going to get to the trumpets. So before the trumpets, there's this silence for a half an hour. And another angel with a golden censer came and stood at the altar, and he was given a great quantity of incense to offer with the prayers of the saints. By the way, this is when you go into an Orthodox church, into a Catholic church, or sometimes an Episcopalian church, when they're doing the incense, this is what that comes from, that prayers of the saints hearkening up to the throne of God. So that's why that incense is used. He was given a great quantity of incense to offer with the prayers of the saints on the golden altar that is before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. And then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it onto the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumbling, and flashes of lightning and earthquake. Now, what does that earthquake come from?
Okay.
It comes from the prayers.
Oh,
So what the writer is helping us see is that these prayers are gathered up. The prayers that the church is offering, they're gathered up and they're brought before the throne of God. And then those prayers are come back on to the form of the earth in the form of lightning. So your prayers are answered. That's the message here, right? Kind of beneath the vision, we get to see the message that prayers have an effect on the outpouring of history.
Now the seven angels who had the seven trumpets made ready to blow them, and the first angel blew his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were hurled to the earth. And a third of the earth, now remember, we're always going to see that limited amount of evil. So as the seven trumpets are blown, just like the four horsemen, things are going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. But notice the limitation in the language. A third of the earth was burned up, and a third of all the trees were burned up, and all of the green grass was burned up. And the second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. And then the third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and the springs of water, and the name of the star was Wormwood. And a third of the waters became wormwood, and many died from the water because it was made bitter. And the fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light was darkened, and a third of the day was kept from shining, and likewise the night. And then I looked, and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew in mid-heaven, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth at the blasts of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow. Now keep in mind that these angels are actually sort of hearkening the destruction of what is unfolding in history. So it's not as if, now this is complicated to think about, so I'm going to throw this out there. It's not as if just evil is the only thing that is kind of creating trouble within the world. There is an outfolding that needs to happen in order for, we're going to learn later, but I'm going to allude to it now, in order for the consummation to take place. And so God gives authority to these angels to sort of hasten the unfolding of history, which is going to include these woes, right? So some of the unfolding of history is given authority by God to just, like, it's got to run its course. It's just got to go. It's got to go. It's got to go. And that's what we see happening here with these trumpets. And then the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given a key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. This is not good, by the way. The bottomless pit is not where people want to be. I want to read chapter 9 because we're going to be able to identify evil a little bit stronger. And then that's going to take us to 10 and 11, which will close us up for today. A shaft to the bottomless pit, and he opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. And then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given authority like the authority of scorpions on the earth. And they were told not to damage the grass or any of the green growth, but only, remember, that seal is going to come up right here, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. So there's a sense in which those that don't have the seal are going to undergo more destruction than those that do have the seal. The seal offers some protection. It's still limited, though. They were allowed to torture them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torture was like the torture of a scorpion when it stings someone. And in those days, people will seek death, but not find it, and they will long to die, but death will flee from them. And in the appearance of the locusts were like horses equipped for battle, and on their heads were what looked like crowns of gold, and their faces were like human faces. Their hair like women's hair, and their teeth like lions' teeth. They had scales like iron breastplates. And the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots and horses rushing into battle. They have tails like scorpions with stingers, and in their tail is the power to harm people for 5 months. They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek, he is called Apollyon. The first woe has passed. There are still 2 woes to come. So here we have the opportunity to meet the destroyer. That's what that word means, destruction or destroyer. So we have that chance to see that there is indeed one. It's not just our imagination, but there is indeed one who is bringing about destruction and havoc. And he is the one who has the key to the bottomless pit. Now, as we get to the end of Revelation, we're going to see what happens to that key. But right now, that pit is open. And he has the ability and has some sort of authority on the earth in order to sort of wreak his havoc. Now, that authority, as we learn in this text, has been given because the seventh trumpet has been sounded. And as the seventh trumpet sounded, this is what comes forth from it. So there's a sense in which the unfolding of history is God is unleashing it, is being allowed to unfold in the way that it needs to unfold for that final consummation to take place. But in the unfolding, there is a lot of destruction and havoc and pain. And those that have the seal have some degree of protection. Those that don't have the seal are still protected to some degree because evil is limited. But one of the things, I just wanted to get to that story of this destroyer to be very clear that this this being comes up here in the book of Revelation, and it's going to kind of carry through, and we're going to see what happens to this individual as we get to the end. So we meet him here.
Why do they use the word angel to describe him?
Yeah.
The angels are progressing God's, this is the end of time, but this, is it the same word for this guy, angel?
Yeah. So he's a messenger, he doesn't, and this is, when we think about, again, I'm not an expert on Satan or this destroyer or anything. I try to stay obviously as far away from this guy as I can, but we do have an idea that maybe there's a sense in which he's a fallen angel. I mean, there is kind of some of that stuff that comes up here, that he's a messenger in which maybe his first call was to follow and to worship and to be a part of this whole throne of God, and he opts not and opts for something else, opts to not be a part of the rest of the work of angels, which is to defend and to provide messages and to worship. So this is an angel that does not do that. We're going to skip the rest because we just got to the first woe. And then the second part, when the sixth angel blew his trumpet, other things are going to happen. I just want to pick up at verse 20. The rest of humankind who were not killed by the plagues did not repent of the work of their hands or give up worshiping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze and stone, which cannot see or hear or walk. And they did not repent of their murders or their sorceries or their fornications or their thefts. So there is a little bit of an idea here that part of the unfolding of history is an opportunity for people to change. An opportunity for those outside of the church to hear and to see and to come into worship. But the text here tells us that not a lot of them did. But by that allusion, we see that part of the goal is for them to come into the worship of God. All right, so verse 10 and 11, chapters 10 and 11, these are going to tell us about the work of the church. And there is another interlude here. So we've just kind of had this big release. We've met the devil. We've met this angel that is bad news. We don't want to mess with him. We've seen that there's incredible destruction. Humankind seems to be falling away more and more. And then in chapters 10 and 11, we find this interlude of what the role of the church is. And the role of the church is actually to provide hope and to continue to proclaim the gospel, even in the midst of this turbulent line. And I'm not going to read all of this chapter, but I'm going to pick up here at verse 8. Then the voice that I had heard from heaven spoke to me again, saying, "Go take the scroll that is open in the hand of the angel who was standing on the sea and on the land." So I went to the angel and told him to give me a little of the scroll. And he said, "Take it and eat it. It will be bitter in your stomach, but sweet as honey in your mouth." So I took the little scroll. This is a different scroll, by the way. It's confusing, but the word here for scroll is a different scroll. So he takes a different scroll from
What chapter are you in?
I'm on chapter 10, and I picked up at verse 8.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I took the little scroll, now I'm at verse 10. I took the little scroll from the hand of the angel and ate it, and it was sweet as honey in my mouth, But when I had eaten it, my stomach was bitter. And then they said to me, you must prophesy again about many peoples and nations and languages and kings. Chapter 11 is really all about the work of the church. All of the allusions there to the temple are about the church on the planet Earth. But really what this verses 8 through 11 of chapter 10 are telling us is that even within this scroll of history, there's a little scroll that the church gets to work itself. And that it's going to be challenging. It tastes as sweet as honey, but there might be some bitterness because there might be some pain that goes along with it. But that is something that needs to happen. And there's that command to continue to prophesy to the nations and the peoples. And that word prophesy, you know, it's that word to tell, to proclaim, to share. And that is going to be the work of the church, because we jump right in from that verse 11 into chapter 12. And we only have a few minutes left, so I'm not going to read it. But in chapter 12, we're going to find that there's olive trees and lampstands, which are exactly what was found within the temple. But rather than referring to the temple, it's referring to the church on earth. So it's referring to how God is acting here on earth. And we also meet the fact that there are these witnesses. There are these witnesses that have the opportunity to come and to share in the midst of the lampstands and the olive trees. And then we get to the seventh trumpet, and we're going to close with this. So this is chapter 11, verse 15. Then the seventh angel blew his trumpet, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, and I'm going to ask you where this comes from. The kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Messiah, and he will reign forever and ever. That's where that comes from. So on Easter, when you hear that hallelujah chorus, think Revelation 11. And then the 24 elders who sit on their throne fell on their faces and worshiped God, singing, "We give you thanks, Lord God Almighty, who are and who were, for you have taken your great power and you have begun to reign." Okay, so there's this transition of reign. God is taking the power. The nations raged, but your wrath has come. The time for judging the dead, for rewarding your servants, the prophets and the saints and all who fear your name, both great and small, for destroying those that destroy the earth. Then God's temple in heaven was opened, and the ark of his covenant was seen within his temple, and there were flashes of lightning, rumbling, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and heavy hail. So God is reigning. And one of the things that this writer has the opportunity to share with us is that when that rain happens, God doesn't descend onto the earth, but the earth opens. And God becomes the one who reigns over heaven and earth. So that is the vision. The church has a role. It has this tiny scroll that it has to continue to unfold. Evil is real. People are being persecuted. But there is one who reigns forever and ever. All right. I'm going to press pause and come back in the fall. Hang in there. Thank you. I have some questions for reflection on your document, so you can think about those later. I'm gonna have a rough here, but you can think about it this week. Oh, and I wanted to finish with this. I have it right here.
Janice brought up a really good question. I do have 2 QR codes here. If you want to capture them today. Or I will talk to Lisa and have them send out an email. Yeah, because that would be the link to the slides. Yes.